there's concern because there was a tradition where Hamas was not friendly with Hezbollah, but that's changed, and they now are working together. You're calling it an axis here. How do you think the relationship between Hamas and Hezbollah may well develop into something even much more serious than we've seen these last few days?
Well, actually, Hamas and Hezbollah have been allies for quite some time. This is something that is really not understood. So I deal with this actually in my book, After Saturday Comes Sunday, Understanding the Christian Crisis in the Middle East. So in the Middle East, you've got a sectarian axis between the Sunnis and the Shias. And they're hostile towards each other. They're existential enemies of each other, the Sunnis and the Shias. Within the Sunni camp, you've got pro- and anti-Muslim Brotherhood groups. So Turkey and Qatar are pro-Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt and Saudi Arabia are anti-Muslim Brotherhood. But there's another axis as well, and that's the axis of resistance, which is led by Iran and is dominated by Shia, and it's the resistance against Israel and the American presence in the Middle East. And they regard Israel, they say it's got nothing to do with religion or anti-Semitism. They say that Israel is the great Satan's like proxy in here in the Middle East to be a problem in the middle of the Muslim Ummah, to prevent them from coming together in unity. And so the axis of resistance, led by Iran, are all those Islamic powers and jihadist groups that want to see the elimination of Israel and American bases from the Middle East. And they are opposed to the powers that are allied to Israel and America, like Saudi Arabia. Egypt has a peace treaty with Israel. Jordan has a peace treaty with Israel. And they have bases. They have American bases. So it's these two groups are diametrically opposed to each other, and that cuts across the Sunni-Shia line. Hamas is an axis of resistance power, just like Palestinian Islamic Jihad and just like Al-Qaeda.
Now, just for clarity, because I know these things are complex, and we're not going to get it any better for a description of what is going on other than from you, Elizabeth Kendal. When we talk about the Shias and the Sunnis, many of our listeners might recognise that's been a very historic thing that goes back over 1,000 years. If we're looking at those nations that are surrounding Israel now, and as you've mentioned, Iran, and you've mentioned the groups, of course, Hamas and Hezbollah, the connections here, which ones are Shia and which ones are Sunni? Because you're saying that the connection between Hezbollah and Hamas now actually bridges a divide between the two, which is quite an historic development. So if you're thinking about those nations around Israel, for listeners who might not be so across all of this, how do you describe who's on whose side?
All the groups that want to eliminate Israel and kick America out of the Middle East are part of the axis of resistance. So the leader of that is Shiite-dominated Iran. But and of course their number one proxy is Hezbollah. They created Hezbollah, but also in that same axis of resistance are the Sunni resistance powers, resistance groups of Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is aligned with Iran. Iran backs Al-Qaeda. Iran is against Islamic State because Islamic State is anti-Shia, but Al-Qaeda actually is aligned with Iran, and that's one of the big hot spots and sore points between Islamic State and Al-Qaeda.
Okay, now just bear with me while we're just clarifying these things, and I think this is important for our understanding. Saudi Arabia and sidling up, cozying up with Israel has not been well received by this axis led by Iran. Is there any insight here? Because we were hearing just yesterday the possibility that some of this attack may come to disrupt the alliance between Israel and Saudi Arabia, who would be in the Sunni camp. Thoughts here from you, just clarifying how you see things?
Yes, so there's quite a few analysts who believe that this is one of the key reasons why the axis of resistance have been and led in this particular attack by Hamas has moved at this particular point, because Saudi Arabia is working through the process of normalization with Israel. Now, the Saudi royal family is anti-Muslim Brotherhood and is very money orientated. I think Mohammed bin Salman and others in the Saudi royal ruling at the present time are more interested in money than they are in Islamic purity. I often think they're probably likely to find themselves getting assassinated. In fact, there was an assassination attempt on Mohammed bin Salman a few years ago, and he was shot inside the palace. So this will split Saudis. I would suggest that those who support a resistance position within Saudi Arabia will probably, they could rise up against the Saudi royal family. That's quite possible.